Okay, this lecture covers a number of topics that are going to be grouped together under the category of multimedia. Multimedia is the use of a computer to present and/or combine media such as text, graphics, audio, video, animation, etc. So some of the things we'll be talking about, I'll make a pass through this list really quick and then go back and spend a little bit of time on each. Is quality of service first. Deals with the fact that some traffic is, quote, more important than other traffic. We'll talk about voice over IP, which is making telephone calls over the internet protocol. We'll talk about IPTV, which is television over IP. And then we will talk about presence over IP. A lot of times when I think about presence over IP, I think like teleconferencing software. But in the book, it is basically talking about any status indicators that convey the ability and willingness of a person to communicate, like instant messaging. So the first thing is quality of service. This is discussed in Chapter 8 of your supplemental textbook. And like I said before, it deals with the fact that some traffic is more important than other traffic. So as far as explanation, if you view a web page and you type in the URL and hit return, and maybe one time you get the web page in a second, maybe the next time it takes 2.5 seconds. Most people are probably not going to notice that, and that's not going to impact the viewing of that web page. But if you're talking on a phone call with somebody using voice over IP, and the conversation goes like this: "Hey, what doing? Do you want go out?" So that was very choppy. There were words or parts of words that were mentioned. So most people are going to have to say, you're breaking up. What did you say? Can you repeat that? So when we're talking about voice packets or videos that are streaming, it is more important for those packets to show up in a timely fashion so we don't have a disruption of communications. So summing that up, that's to say that voice and video streaming packets are more important than web browsing or email reading, that type of thing. And quality of service tries to deal with that. Now, most time people don't ask, but every now and then a student will notice, hey, we had IP version 4 and we went to IP version 6. What happened to IP version 5? Very rarely is IP version 5 ever mentioned other than in the context of quality of service. Because IP version 5, one of the big things in it was to address quality of service. So IP version 5 started out as a protocol called Internet Stream Protocol, and it was developed by Apple, Next, and Sun Microsystems to stream video and voice and to deal with quality of service related to that. The big problem with this protocol is that it still used IP version 4 or 32-bit addressing, and this was at a point in time that it was clear with the exponential growth of the internet that we've talked about in the past that we were going to run out of 32-bit IP addresses. So IP version 5 was never made formal. And then to address the running out of IPs, we went from IP version 4 to IP version 6, which will be the last or one of the last topics we talk about in this class. Voice over IP is discussed in Chapter 20 of your supplemental textbook. And as the name implies, this is using the Internet Protocol to carry voice information or voice conversations. The first thing considered, or the thing considered the first voice over IP application was something called Speak Freely. And this was developed by gamers to allow gamers to communicate while they were playing games. In this case, over dial-up modems would have been how most people were connected to the internet. Cisco released physical voice over IP phones in 1997. These are things that look like the handset that you would normally have on your landline, but instead of plugging into a telephone jack, an RJ11 jack, it plugs into an RJ45 Ethernet jack and uses IP protocol to operate and carry the voice conversations that people might have. So like I said, those came out in 1997. The largest growth of voice over IP started in 2010. Another thing related to multimedia is IPTV or IP television. This is discussed in Chapter 21 of your supplemental textbook. And basically, IPTV refers to an IP application that supports several high-quality video and audio standards like MPEG format and H.261 format, being used for live video, scheduled video, and video on demand. And IPTV was considered to be created in 1995, so it's been around for a while. There are several requirements that were placed on IPTV. First, you have to have quality of service so that your phone call, your Skype call, whatever it is, works correctly. Multicast is helpful. If you're streaming video from one location to many destinations, that is the definition of a multicast protocol, and often that is helpful in certain types of multimedia. You need identity and authentication to prove who you are and possibly what you have access to. You have something called a communications context, and that's basically what's going on. So the example the book uses is that two people are watching the same movie, and while they're watching that movie, they text back and forth about what's happening or their thoughts on the movie. Not exactly sure how to pronounce this word, but since it deals with being a quote nomad, I'll go with nomadicity. That's probably butchering it, but basically this means you may be a nomad, that is moving from location to location. You might be in a hotel, you might be at home, you might be in the office, you might be at a friend's office, and you would need to be able to access your television service from multiple locations. Television has the emergency notification systems. IPTV should have the capability for that as well, particularly in overlaying content or messages in emergency situations. You need a way to be able to search and discover content. Most services like Hulu, Netflix have here's new releases, here's comedy, here's mystery, here's biographies, etc. So that's what that's referring to. It needs to have the capability to do digital rights management. What digital rights management is trying to enforce things like copyright. so that it is not easy or possible for you to basically steal movies or multimedia. And then you need some type of session management. And the session management is managing the session you are currently having with the IPTV provider. So you need to be able to, once you've found content, initiate playing that content and control the content. So we're talking about things like play, rewind, forward, pause, stop, fast rewind, fast forward, etc. Maybe bookmarking might be thrown in there as well. And then the last thing that we're going to talk about is presence over IP. And this is discussed in Chapter 19 of the supplemental textbook. And what they're talking about is finding, retrieving, and subscribing to changes in presence information. For example, is a user online or offline? So the classic example of this is instant messaging. You have a way to say, I'm online, I'm offline. Here's a list of my friends. I have some type of indicator as to whether they're online, offline, possibly idle. I have the capability of selecting one of those people and sending them a message. And then the other thing, like on your smartphone, if you are messaging with somebody, you might send them a message, and then you may see an animated ... That's presence information. It says they're at their phone and they are currently typing something. So presumably you will be getting a message from them soon. So those are all the things in the class that we want to talk about that fall under the category of multimedia.